Hello and welcome back to In AI We Trust. I'm your host, Miriam Vogel, and today I am thrilled to be having you join us here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. We are here to launch our AI literacy initiative. As you know, we launched this initiative so that we can hear from you. We want to hear from more individuals, more communities, more leaders in the AI space. Our approach with the AI literacy initiative is twofold. First, we want to have an honest conversation. We're hearing from most people that they are afraid. We want to lean into the fear. We want to hear what you're afraid of. We want to hear what you're feeling about AI in general. We want to hear the ways that you're using it. We want to hear how you're using it in ways that are innovating your home, your community, your company. We want to talk about ways that you're afraid of using it so that we can talk about risk mitigation strategies. What are ways that you can use it more safely? Because then we have to get to the second part of the conversation. How can we use it to give you more opportunity? How can we make sure that your family, community, and companies are benefiting from AI that you can be sure that you're using safely and effectively? That's what we call AI literacy. We have 3 separate and integrated parts of this initiative. We are collecting resources from across the globe that are best in class to help support you, whether you're a parent, a teacher, a community organizer, an individual who wants to learn more about AI. We're assembling those on our resource hub on our website, and we'll be updating those routinely. So please check it out and tell us if there's a resource that you recommend, and we'll make sure to check it out and get it up there. Second, we are interviewing thought leaders on this podcast like we'll be doing today and as we've been doing over the past year. We want to make sure you're hearing from more voices, who's innovating effectively, who's bringing along their community, who has use cases that you can benefit from. And third, today we are launching our event series. We are going around the country to see which AI leaders we can learn from. We are looking into different ways that different leaders across the political spectrum, in industry, in communities, are finding innovative ways to support themselves and their communities with AI so that we can all learn from their leadership. Now let's dive into this episode. Today in AI We Trust is recording here in Chattanooga, Tennessee at our first stop on our AI literacy tour, where we are partnering with local and national leaders to explore how communities across America are preparing for an AI-powered future. We are sitting down here with Mayor Tim Kelly, the forward-thinking mayor of Chattanooga, and Angie Cooper, president of Heartland Forward, our incredible partner in bringing AI literacy and opportunity to communities across the country. As we launch our AI literacy initiative, we're here because of the important work we get to showcase and learn from in Chattanooga that's being used, where AI is being used to shape the city's infrastructure, education, and workforce. In our events over the next day, we are going to observe and learn and listen to AI leadership, how you are using your position to help all of the people here in Chattanooga advance through AI and otherwise. Before diving into our conversation, a little bit of background on both of these special guests. Mayor Tim Kelly, as you all know, is a Chattanooga native, entrepreneur, civic innovator, and he's helping the city become a national model for technology readiness. Under his leadership, Chattanooga has been using AI for everything from traffic management to workforce development, proving that innovation doesn't just belong to big cities and the coasts. Before entering public service, he had a very successful career as a local business owner, entrepreneur, and helped found the, I understand, very popular Chattanooga FC local professional soccer team. Under his leadership, Chattanooga became the first U.S. city to deploy city-wide gigabit broadband and has integrated AI-driven traffic management systems, which we're going to ask you about, using real-time data to reduce congestion, cut emissions, and enhance pedestrian safety. Who does not want that in their city? So we're going to have to dig in there. We are so thrilled to have you here today and learn what you mean with your vision to make this a city where everyone can master AI. Thank you for being with us. Yeah. And we're so happy to have our dear friend and partner, Angie, who, as you all know, runs Heartland Forward, a think and do tank, where she leads work to translate research into action, driving economic growth, partnerships, and digital opportunity across America's heartland. Angie is a proud Oklahoma native and spent her entire career serving heartland communities. Prior to joining Heartland, she spent 16 years in public policy and government affairs at Walmart. She is a dynamo, and we are so excited to hear about how you're bringing AI readiness across the Heartland. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you, Miriam.
So to start with you, Mayor Kelly, Chattanooga has been called one of America's most connected cities. It is now becoming one of the most AI ready under your leadership. You're known for building from railroads to broadband and more, and now AI infrastructure. What made you decide to double down on AI? How did you start focusing on AI literacy and innovation, and where did you start?
Well, that's a lot. I'll just dive in. I mean, again, it's important to understand that I came from the business world. I never ran for anything. Didn't run for student council before I ran for mayor. But, as somebody who kind of had given my life to the city, I'd been on the Chamber of Commerce board a couple of different times and was the head of our community foundation. I just wanted to see the city move forward. And in mid-sized cities, as Angie knows, and I should say thank you, Angie, for making all this possible in Heartland. As we know, right? I mean, the plight of mid-sized cities is very different. And I came to believe that really we were in a bit of a critical moment for mid-sized cities, or in particular Chattanooga, where we were either going to move forward or move back. I read a book that scared me called The New Geography of Jobs. And I really felt like, as the knowledge economy is aggregating in larger markets, we got two on either side of us, Nashville and Atlanta. Like we had got to press forward if we didn't want to just be kind of, a bunch of light manufacturing jobs and fall further and further behind. Ultimately, my theory of change is economic, and so Chattanooga needs to become a wealthier city overall, and we need to close the wealth gap within it. And so if we're going to do that, we've got to innovate. And we had the great good fortune to thanks to city leaders before me, to have this incredible broadband network, this great municipal fiber network, which we are leveraging in many ways. But, AI, again, as I think we were telling you before we started, I was very much a Google person before we started. The city was already on Google Workspace. And so, and in my training and, my kind of mayor school experience with Mitch Weiss at Harvard, it obviously is the topic du jour. So it was an obvious place for me to really press forward. I'll shut up there, I'm sure.
Don't stop. No. And it does seem like you've brought a lot of background and interest from your different hats that you've worn in the past. Entrepreneur, soccer club founder, business owner. How do you think that has influenced your approach to how you're addressing AI in public service?
Well, again, I'm used to the private sector, and you have to compete. You have to innovate. You have to carve out competitive advantage if you're going to win market share or anything else. And I've got a pretty good track record of doing that. And again, I think, there's this kind of axiomatic truth that government doesn't have competition. And that's really a big problem, getting into government and trying to remind people they actually do have competition. I mean, we very much have competition. And if, talk to my Chamber of Commerce head at least once a week, if not more often. And again, we are in a competition with other cities for talent, for jobs, and that I brought that kind of to the table. It's easy to get elected to an office like this and coast, but I didn't get in it to sort of climb a political ladder. I got in it because I believe in the promise and the potential of the city. And the good news is I've got some incredible, raw material to work with. So, but my experience in the private sector taught me to be very mission focused.
Mm-hmm. And Angie, speaking of mission focused, so much has happened since we last had you on the podcast, and that was in May. We are thrilled to have you back. And since we last spoke, you've hosted your Big Bets for America Summit in Oklahoma City. You've launched your Heartland AI Caucus, a bipartisan group of state and executive leaders working to harness the power of AI to prepare the Heartland to lead. What sparked the idea for the caucus? What problem are you aiming to solve, and what will success look like?
Miriam, it's great to be back with you. And Mayor Kelly, thank you for hosting us in Chattanooga. We're excited for this evening and the next day to have thoughtful conversations around AI and education and what that means for communities just like Chattanooga. Miriam, as you know, I'm a big fan of mayors. My dad was mayor growing up. So I believe in what local government can do. And it takes leaders like Mayor Kelly. We also have named Chattanooga, Tennessee 2 times in a row, secret sauce community for Heartland Forward as we work every single day to be a resource for states and communities to really help change the narrative and accelerate economic growth in those 20 states that we define as the Heartland, which make up the third largest economy in the world. So why are we doing what we're doing around AI? AI and Heartland Forward sits under our regional competitiveness pillar. We've been on a listening tour. We've been asking mayors, we've been asking city council members, thought leaders in communities, developers of AI, educators, state leaders. What can we do in the heartland to really harness the power of AI? And Miriam, that's a lot of things. As I mentioned, we'll be talking about AI in education, AI in governance over the next couple of days. But AI in policy too. I think when we think about AI, it's the infrastructure. It's the infrastructure communities like Chattanooga are building, but it's also ensuring those policies ladder up not just at the local level, but to the state level and talking to our national leaders. So that's why we're really excited that we've officially launched and are currently recruiting mayor some AI caucus members. And we're starting, what's exciting about the caucus is we're starting in the 6 states in which we launch Connecting the Heartland to High-Speed Internet. Because I like to remind people that's probably still the number one economic issue of our time, and you have to have internet, which Chattanooga does, to be connected to AI. So we're bringing state leaders and local leaders together to really talk about the economic opportunities if we get AI right in those 20 states in the heartland.
Oh, thank you for doing that. We learned so much from what you're doing, both the programs you lift off and launch, but also how everything is evidence-based. You bring really important data points to the conversation. In our last conversation, you mentioned about the AI sentiments surveys you've been doing. You've been identifying generational shifts, fear, where there is ways to address the fear and mitigate the fears, reduce the fears. So I'm curious, after the salon dinners you've been doing, the Heartland Summit, I know you're doing a lot more survey research. Are there current surveys you have underway? Are there trends that you're seeing that we should be aware of?
What's really interesting about some recent survey work that we've done is in 2024, we looked at sort of how do people feel about AI in the heartland, and 34% of people were, I think I want to learn more, but I'm not sure. Just within 1 year, Heartlanders are saying at 68%, I want to learn more about AI. So the way people feel about AI is moving just as quickly as the technology and what we're learning about it. We also know we've looked at Gen Z in the heartland, and we are seeing a lot of people, Gen Zers at like 40-some%, are using AI every single day from some of the basic, tools like ChatGPT and others. But only 10% of those Gen Zers are learning it in school, and only 9% of those Gen Zers feel like that they're ready to use AI in the workforce. When then you flip back to the way people feel about AI in the heartland as it looks to employment, 70% of people think their employer should teach them how to use AI. These are all really interesting stats. This is why we're also doing listening tours, because we are a think and do tank. So you have to talk to the people and really understand. But we know that just those numbers and what we're hearing is we've got to up our game on AI in education. More urban schools might be teaching AI, but what's happening in rural schools? And we're going to talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. But also, when we think about 70% of people think their employer should teach them how to use AI, what does that mean for Main Street? What does that mean for small business nonprofits, and entrepreneurs. So really at Heartland Forward is we have the pleasure and privilege to work with mayors like Mayor Kelly, but we're really looking and then how can Heartland Forward fill the gap in some of these opportunities?
Looks like you had something you wanted to say, Mayor, about that.
No, I'm sure we'll talk more about it, but I mean, I think I'm grateful for the work that you guys are doing because I think it's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity for smaller communities to equalize. There's so many things that we couldn't have done in smaller communities and rural communities that we can now. I mean, again, it really comes down to productivity and access, and it can just solve a lot of problems to help level the playing field between some smaller and larger communities, I think.
Well, and I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing to expose these gaps. Students are using AI. They're not learning about it in school. What a missed opportunity. Understandably, the schools are intimidated. They don't know where to start. This isn't their training. So I fully understand and can appreciate that sentiment. On the other hand, we're raising a lost generation if we're not teaching them how to use AI and teaching them what is cheating, what is effective, how do you deepen your critical thinking tools, your study guides with AI use, as opposed to putting your head in the sand and ignoring that reality.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to require our school superintendent, who will be here later. God bless him. It requires a fair amount of courage and risk. To just confront it because it's easier. I think, again, it's easy for me to say at this point, but I think academic bureaucracies arguably are more impenetrable than government bureaucracies sometimes. So the tendency to reverse justify and not do anything is very great. But we're fortunate in that the Hamilton County Department of Education is very much on the front foot and sees this, right? We can be the windshield or we can be the bug. And in this case, again, those numbers, I hadn't heard those numbers, but I was struck by them. I mean, particularly Gen Z, they're using it anyway. So the question is, is that going to be, are you going to meet them where they are, and guide that usage and make sure that it's as productive as it can be or not?
Well, and I think another problem is we talk about AI generally. Even one of your studies showed that if you talk about AI, there's a higher level of fear than if you break it down by use case and type of AI. So let's break it down into use cases. Who doesn't not want better traffic patterns? Who does not want to have less time wasted getting from A to B? And it looks like you've made some pretty exciting gains there that every city should be learning from. You're a mid-sized city, so small cities, mid-size, large cities all could benefit from what you're doing with your smart traffic management systems. What was your goal in launching that system? How much time does it take? And were there helpful resources we should know about so that others can follow your lead?
Yeah, so Chattanooga had a history of we won a lot of awards for smart city stuff. But what I found when I got into office is that that a lot of it was academic, but it wasn't being applied. We're very fortunate that we've got a Center for Urban Informatics and Progress here in Chattanooga, led by the brilliant Mina Sartipi. And she's doing groundbreaking research. I'm sure we'll talk about more of that later. But they weren't talking to public works, right? Our traffic lights weren't synchronized. And I had read a couple of books by a Harvard professor named Rosabeth Moss Kanter, whose whole thing was, look, this is about productivity, ultimately. I mean, that is kind of the holy grail of economics, is productivity. And so better traffic management, it's not only great for the environment, but it's about, quality of life and productivity. There's no reason not to pursue this. And so it's a really compelling goal. Unfortunately, I pledged to essentially, to sync the lights when I came into office, and found very quickly that it was a lot more complicated and expensive than I thought. All the switch gear and all the traffic boxes was from the mid '60s. It was all kind of the equivalent of knob and tube wiring. And to do this, you've got to start with infrastructure investment in the hardware itself. I mean, essentially, you've got to go back and put blade servers in all those boxes. So it's taken a couple of years, but we are doing it. And again, there are some great partners out there doing it. Google has a great program called Google Greenlight that does this. But again, the city has got to have the political will to budget the money to do it. And then on top of that, we have Mina's group that's using LiDAR. We could talk about our smart smart switches in our downtown grid to further enhance it, with cameras and AI. We're making progress, but it is not a small project.
Well, tell us more about that. We want to hear about what you're referencing. It sounds like it's kind of revolutionary.
Well, I mean, it is. It's happening. We're not the only city in the world where it's happening, but it's intersection by intersection. And frankly, the traffic management piece, the basic traffic management piece, is relatively simple, using cameras to look at traffic patterns and then dynamically manage the lights. What Mina and her group is doing in an intersection right out here, which is a grid that's not quite as large, is actually uses LiDAR sensors and captures a tremendous amount of data on pedestrian movement and automotive movement. And that one is a little more experimental still. We're doing a pilot with Audi on V2X technology so that vehicles are talking to each other. And so in theory, if every car had that, you could actually eliminate traffic lights entirely, because I would know when you're coming and my car would say, slow down, here comes another car, and it wouldn't let it pass. So that's all kind of Buck Rogers stuff at this point. But, we're most immediately, and that's beginning to bear some fruit. But, I'm most excited about just being able to, NIMBYism is a big problem in cities, right? A lot of people don't want us to build new housing. They don't want development to stop. And a lot of that has to do with traffic congestion. Another great benefit of it is, as I've said many times, I think if, well-managed traffic is going to be like adding another lane of pavement without adding another lane of pavement, right? And we've seen that in a couple of pilot intersections in Chattanooga, so we know it works.
I think what's exciting about this too, and for a mayor, infrastructure is so important. I'll go back. My dad was the mayor, and he always used to say, I'm really at the heart of what I do. I'm a water, sewer, and trash guy. I got to get these things right. And infrastructure is so important to not just the economic success, but to your point, quality of life. And what the statement that the mayor said is, we looked at the grid and we looked at how do we increase traffic patterns, and they hadn't really been looked at since, you said, the 60s?
I mean, the hardware hadn't been upgraded. You're supposed to retime your lights. I think the standard's every 3 years, and we hadn't done it in 9.
Yeah. But this technology, I bet you're not going to have to say that statement again.
No.
Because the technology is going to keep up, and we're going to be able, and it won't be as expensive the next time we do it. And so these are the things when people start to say, oh, should we or should we not use AI to make things better? That's a game changer, right? So we don't have to wait 9 years to update, because who knows what kind of cars we'll be driving in 9 years, So those are the exciting things about, I think, what it means for communities specifically.
Yeah, no, it does. And again, it requires a little bit of political will, because again, a lot of times people don't understand it. So, every politician gets and spends political capital, but I've spent quite a lot, here, because I do feel like it'll pay dividends for a very long time. So it's, it'll provide shade from a tree that was planted a long time ago.
Yeah.
Well, and part of the reason that we are here, no, not part of the reason, the entire reason we're here is to look at demonstrations of AI leadership, to understand what it looks like. Everyone is looking for that. People are afraid to move forward, particularly in government. There's a lot of awareness that AI may be helpful. There's a lot of fear about the unknowns. And Angie, I know you go across cities looking and understanding and identifying this leadership. We're so grateful for the people you amplify and the work that you underscore with your efforts. So I know you're a big fan of Mayor Kelly, and I'm wondering, are there one or two others you think we should learn from and make sure that others are learning from as well?
Yeah, just our listening tour that we have been across the heartland, talking in places, everything from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to they're thinking about, they are trying to also lead in broadband and to, help not just teach those digital skills, but then highlight what that means for AI. In Ohio, the state is doing a lot of things specifically as AI in government, so state efficiencies. But then Ohio State, big university is saying they want everyone that graduates to have AI proficiency class. That was not the case 2 years ago. And you can name multiple universities doing something similar. I also get really excited, and Mayor Kelly, some of our friends from Fargo, North Dakota, uh, you know, when we look at the data of people that are sort of fearful about AI, and you mentioned it earlier, breaking it down by industry, the agriculture industry has been using these types of technologies for quite some time. And if you haven't been to Fargo, you must go because they're driving innovation and it's in agriculture communities. And when these farmers are now thinking about, succession planning for their family, they've got to integrate this technology because it's not the same way we used to run farms and ranches anymore. And so the list really just goes on and on. It's been a pleasure to be in a lot of these communities, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Montgomery, Alabama. I will say, though, when it works, and I say this a lot, the magic happens when you bring the right people around the table, and it takes leadership. And so it's sometimes hard to lead in a space that's unknown, but that's really what we encourage. And that's why we're trying to be that resource with the AI caucus, with the data that we're trying to bring to the table, because you can be I've been in the rooms, Mayor, you have too, the smartest people in the room, and they actually don't know what question to ask about AI.
Yeah.
So we can all just feel comfortable that we all feel that way. But how do we think about it together? And like I said, how do we harness the power of AI so the Heartland has the opportunity to lead?
Well, and back to the leadership, back to the use cases, Mayor, you give us so many to talk about the AI-powered autonomy-aware neighbor mobility zones project, as well as the
That's quite a name.
I did not mess up my. Is there an acronym in there? I don't.
Yeah, that is a mouthful, as opposed to CHAIN, the Chattanooga AI Network, where you help workers develop skills they'll need to thrive in an AI-powered economy. Tell us more about one or two of these projects that other cities could be learning from and replicating.
Yeah, it can be a little dizzying because there's not an aspect of our lives that it won't impact. I mean, we're going to talk tonight a lot about workforce development, and I think that's one that is both, I know, scary and promising. I mean, I think that's a theme that we'll hear over and over again. It's both scary and promising depending on the vertical that you're talking about. But we were very, very fortunate in that years ago, we, again, a former mayor and some community leaders started a group called the Enterprise Center here. And the Enterprise Center literally was founded to kind of be the sandbox lab for all that technology that our electric utility, EPB, was producing with fiber, right? So our electric utility runs our fiber network. And so it's been both an innovation lab, it's focused a lot on digital equity, making sure that everybody knows how to use technology. And so the Chain project in particular, I think is exciting in that, that'll come up tonight. The lines are blurring between, regular education, what we call workforce development, what European colleagues call skills development, which in some way skills acquisition, which I think maybe is a better word for it, and what we used to call adult education. It's all kind of running together, which I think is healthy. Because ultimately, what I found myself more and more focused on is the concept of workforce development. At the end of the day, my One Chattanooga plan, my big overarching plan for Chattanooga is about creating wealth, and closing wealth gaps. And the only way to do that is to upskill your workforce, right? To give them opportunities to make a better living. So we've had a really great program, again, partnering with Google, called Impact, where we could take people from a job at Taco Bell, minimum wage job, pay them a stipend while they're going through these Google Coursera classes and come out the other side with IT certifications. And we hope to be able to do that with AI. I mean, that's the next frontier of this, so that, again, we can upskill people into higher wage jobs. At the same time, to be fair, there's a lot of anxiety about job loss. And I think it does require some degree of faith in the old, if you dust off your economics textbook, the old theory of comparative advantage, not competitive advantage, in that, we're going to have to use AI as a, as a prosthetic, as a co-pilot to make people. I think at this point anyway, we certainly need humans to supervise this stuff for the most part and manage the process, but they've got to learn how to do that, right? And become radically more productive in the process.
Well, and how wonderful that instead of leaving it to everyone to figure out on their own, or even, we're talking about the workforce where people want their employers to be training them. It's even a lot to imagine that every company is going to figure out for themselves what workforce training should look like. For a large company, that's hard enough. But for a small company, where do they go to for the resources to know how to train people, what to train them for? So you really do need that leadership to help level set, make sure that you're getting the same level of education, the same access to upskilling, no matter where your company is, what industry you're in.
Yeah, and I will just add, I think there is at the federal level a movement afoot to push resources back down to the state level for workforce development, to give more control to a local government to do that. And at least in the state of Tennessee, we're quite excited about that, because I think it's going to allow us to do things just like that, rather than having to sort of navigate, frankly, what was a kind of tortuous bureaucracy with labor regulations in terms of workforce training. We need to be able to push that stuff down and meet the needs of employers more quickly and more directly, and hopefully we'll be able to do that soon.
Well, and I do think part of addressing the fear is giving people a new visual. It's giving them a path to think about AI and this AI future in a way different than the sci-fi movies where we lose as humans. And I've learned in our conversations preparing for this event, Mayor, you have a brilliant way, a gift of the visual, the prosthetic limb that AI will provide us, and so forth. I'm imagining that you all have similar conversations to what we do every day, where people are expressing their fear. And I'm wondering, with the visuals, with the different tools in your toolkit, I'm wondering how both of you address this fear as it comes up. When someone tells you in your family, in your community, your constituency, I'm afraid of AI, what have you found to be an effective way to respond to help them think about it differently?
You want that first, or would you?
You go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, again, I can speak inside. I think most directly inside city government. I mean, there was a lot of fear and loathing, and so we created a chat space and created a working group, and joined a broader working group with other cities. And full credit to San Jose and the mayor there, who've really led in a lot of ways for fairly obvious reasons. They got really a lot of talented people in San Jose. But just try, just start, right? Start somewhere. And if you freak out, you run into something, that freaks you out, post it, let's talk about it. And because it's just, again, it's a visual analogy. It's like getting in a hot bath, just a toe, then a foot, then up to the knee, just start. You have to begin the begin. And then let's just talk about it, right? And if somebody wants to call a timeout, then we'll call a timeout. And we'll talk about what's going on. And so far so good. I mean, that started for us about 2 years ago. And we had some hiccups along the way. I mean, again, I think hallucinations were a very real concern in a lot of ways for a lot of us. And the tool that we use most often, and it's called Notebook LM, has kind of solved that for the most part. So, but again, if somebody is afraid, we stop, we talk about it, and then we go on. I think trying to force it down people's throat is certainly not the way to go. You do have to ease into it.
What we've seen is we've hosted a lot of gatherings and done sort of, here are all the tools that could be in your toolbox to use AI. And just to the mayor's point, just try them. Let's talk about it. Why is it efficient to use it? What are the opportunities? Where do you need to be cautious? Because there are things you need to be cautious about. But just try. And I think that people are willing to try. Heartland Forward was with a group of state leaders last week in New Orleans with our Health AI Caucus. And you mentioned federal dollars coming down to states and communities. Well, the federal government plans to give $50 billion to states for rural health care. It was maybe the fastest turnaround. States just submitted their plans on November 5th. And the conversations we were having with Department of Health, health leaders on the House and Senate state committees, they started with AI. because in these rural communities, we already know access is limited. We already know there's not enough nurses. We already know there's not enough specialists. So that goes back to our point. What we see in the data, what we're hearing when we're around the table with people, is if we start thinking about one try, but let's think about how we can make our current systems better, and healthcare is one of them. The light bulb sort of clicks and says, well, of course we want innovation, and even sometimes if we don't want innovation, we want to know what kind of tools are out there so then we can decide how quickly we want innovation to happen. So that's just one example. Just last week, we heard from 8 different states and Heartland communities, and, states like Tennessee and Arkansas and Oklahoma and others, like they have the opportunity to get $1 billion. And in that grant process, it says you have to be innovative. So you've got to be thinking about those things.
So what I hear you all saying is you incentivize it. You invite people. You don't expect that they're going to be getting it from somewhere else. It has to be a personal invitation, come try this, and not a grandiose vision.
No, I think that's right. And I think from a political perspective, and again, Mitch Weiss talks about this in his book, which is a great book called We the Possibility. The operative principle in a lot of political organizations is don't embarrass me, right? Don't make a mistake. If you make a mistake, it's going to make me look bad. And so the first thing I had to be very explicit about coming in as mayor, generally, and then very particularly about AI, was don't worry about it. Make mistakes. If you make a mistake, I'm not going to fire you over that mistake.
You're just at the guardrails. What mistakes are you allowed to make?
Well,
where
no,
can you play and where
I
not?
shouldn't have even added that little remainder, but no, and I haven't, right? It's like, you have to give them permission to take risks, but that's the first thing, because the incentive in government is just do it the way it's always been done, because again, you don't have any direct and obvious competitors. So there's just safety in procedure, and there are good reasons for procedures, but a lot of times, they need to be revisited. In this case, you have to tell them it's okay, to kind of push the envelope a little bit, and then come tell us about that, because ultimately, humans are mimics. And when people come back to the table and go, wow, yeah, I did this really cool thing, and everybody's like, oh, yeah, I want to do that. And, that's how it happens.
Which is why we have both of you here today, so everyone can be following your good lead. I also find it's helpful to reveal to people, good news, you're already using AI. Because most people do not realize how many times in a day they are using AI-powered systems. And so to share with people some of the ways they may not know or do know, I'm curious, what are your favorite use cases of AI? Or what's a way that you've benefited from it today?
I use it all the way from, making my emails sound and look better to, when I have large documents to read, you can throw documents in and I can listen to it in a podcast, As a think and do tank, we're also, I have an in-house team of economists and researchers, and we're looking at it from a nonprofit small business. Like, if we're going to be a leading think and do tank, we've got to be integrating AI into the way we do research, just aligning it with the, statistical data and the things that we're doing. So, I learn something new every single day.
Yep.
That either my staff comes and says, look what we're doing, or we're following a university that is now, teaching something cool, like Northwestern and John Deere partnering around AI initiatives, to what's happening in rural K-12 schools, because we've put rooted advisors to help advance high school students to figure out what their pathway is, and they need to know how to use AI. So I'm not an expert. I probably will never be an expert in AI, but we do believe that it is a useful tool, and we want to be a resource for the people that we serve in the Heartland to figure out the best ways to use it for them.
I'd love to just underscore, and if you don't mind, cross out the I'm not an expert part, because you come from government and policy. I think it's so important. Look at all the lives that you are changing in AI, through AI, from your policy background. And I think it's really important we see that's how this happens. If we limited it just to computer scientists, we'd be too limited to think about the policies, to think about the invitations. power to the computer scientists. They need to be part of the conversation, but it would be criminal to expect them to understand how we're going to change the world with the technology. We need these different perspectives. So you are an expert in that, I would say, for sure.
Well, I'll give you 3 examples from today, believe it or not. I mean, that's how often I use it. I mean, the most immediate one, I went over a couple of crosswalks in one of our popular parks, and they were raised. They're meant to be sort of speed bumps, but they're crosswalks, but they're not marked. They're just brick all the way across. I'm like, these are dangerous. Like, people are visual, and you don't get to make up what a stop sign looks like. All stop signs look like that. You don't even think about it. You just know stop. And so I've just asked my Gemini. I was like, well, what's that about? Like, is that even legal? What's the best practice? Is there a national standard? Is there a global standard? And now I know what to go back to my public works director and go like, well, let's mark these. It's okay. I mean, we weirdly enough also learned that there's not a uniform standard, although there probably arguably should be. So that's one. Again, I think before we got started, I was just catching up on meetings, and realized that we have a stormwater wastewater system here that's combined, and learned that we had used AI to scope out the leaks in the system and gotten better data in a fraction of the time that we would have if we had used old manual methods. And then finally, I will say, and you probably all have seen this, right? I mean, I get constantly somebody dropping, a 60-page summary on my desk about, you name it, high-speed rail or workforce development or, urban, an economic development plan. And I routinely drop that into Notebook LM and get a summary that I can read. That's a very thorough summary, and I can turn it into a podcast. I can turn it into a slideshow if I want to share it with other people. And, what I tend to do is use it as a index to kind of dive in deeper with particular areas. But it saved me a tremendous amount of time and energy. And it's allowing me to make better decisions, because the fact of the matter is I couldn't possibly read all that stuff and absorb it. There aren't enough hours in the day. So it's allowing me to essentially make better decisions faster.
I would add to those that have not been to Chattanooga, it is an amazing place to come visit. So you could actually use AI if you're coming to Chattanooga for the first time and figure out all the amazing, beautiful things to see, all the great places to eat. I mean, that's how people are using it too. So I would encourage everyone listening to get and use AI to figure out the best quality of life.
It's a great travel guide, and so I appreciate we appreciate the suggestion.
Well, I know that we have an event to get to, and so I hate to wrap up this conversation. So I'm going to do a few more lightning round questions, if you don't mind. Part of our AI literacy tour is making sure we're hearing from the voices and communities that don't get enough attention. Is there a person or a perspective that you think we need to be adding to the national conversation on AI literacy?
I think teachers. We must include teachers. They're teaching our students and shaping the future. So as much as we can do in the K-12 system, I think the better off we'll be.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think the potential, frankly, before the advent of AI, I had served on the board of a educational reform organization here called Chattanooga 2.0 that was really there to try to repair all these gaps and misconnections between community colleges, four-year colleges, high schools. And AI really has the potential to fix a lot of this stuff. But it's hard. We got to get, and that's why I'm so excited about today and tomorrow. We got to get them on the same page, because AI could really be the kind of the through line, the glue, that holds them together and kind of focuses on what's the point of all this. So I totally agree with Angie.
Well, and we're talking about vision and leadership. So what is the vision with AI literacy? It's a nascent topic, not one that is discussed much, but after our efforts, it will be more. What does it look like if we get this right?
Well, for me, I think, and again, this sounds very lofty, but I really think narrowly. I mean, again, there are so many things we could talk about, but based on my experience as mayor, what I'm seeing inside city government, I think it really has the opportunity to restore faith in government. I mean, people used to hate going to the dentist. I mean, probably people still do, but this can change. I mean, the old saw about having to go to the DMV and wait. I mean, our folks are overworked already. And what we're seeing is that it is going to, make them radically more productive. I do think, again, as we've talked about, it has the opportunity to streamline code. It has the opportunity to, when people have a question, how high can I put my fence up? I mean, the bureaucracy that has frustrated people for so long in government could melt away if it's applied properly. So I'm super excited about that.
And I think, too, the efficiency is just sort of what we see in our communities and our states, but it is important for our country because we want to continue to be a global leader. And if we're not paying attention of what's happening around the world and we're not keeping the pace, that's not great for our communities.
You can't invest your way out of this. You have to bring the people with you, not only for their best interest, for the people to be buying into our economy, but you need the people using the machines, and you need the people adopting.
Absolutely.
Well, and that's where I would, again, shout out to our own enterprise center here. The more I realized that, I didn't realize that wasn't common. But organizations like the enterprise center here are, I think, going to be critical to that, because you're right. I mean, the last thing we need to do is add something else that's going to increase the economic divides in this country. I mean, we've got to bring everybody along.
Well, we like to end this podcast on an optimistic note in the future. Looking ahead, what is a headline, an announcement you'll hope to make on this podcast or at this event in 3 to 5 years with your AI literacy efforts? Angie, I'll start with you.
I would say the Heartland is leading the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, selfishly, I would say Chattanooga's leading. I mean, our job is to do it.
Then you both
right,
win.
we can. Yeah, one's a subset of another, but again, I only took this job because I really, really felt passionately, again, about Chattanooga the same way Angie does about the Heartland broadly, that we have to fight for our economic relevance, and I think we have a real opportunity here.
We do, and you all are seizing the opportunity, and we will all win because of the work that you're doing. So thank you so much for joining us here today, and most importantly, for the work that you're doing.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Miriam.
I'm Miriam Vogel with EqualAI, and this is In AI We Trust. Thank you for joining us for today's episode. Subscribe or download our podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. And we welcome your feedback. If you like the podcast, please rate us, give us a review. And to learn more about EqualAI, visit us at www.equalai.org.